Hello, friends, and welcome to the 1980s. Kathy and I are going to talk about something that's one of those topics that you do not get us started on unless you want
Don't.
us to go on and on
Oh
about
my
it.
God. It's endless.
I was
80s
thinking
horror.
about wearing my Devo hat, but I can't find it.
I don't
So
know where. Yeah, you got to find that because that's really cool.
I know I have a real Devo hat, and it's around here somewhere, but I don't know. Anyway, we I mean, the 80s is a little before our time, of course, but
Still.
you kind of get nostalgic for times that you didn't really live in. A lot of young people like us really get into the 80s and the 90s and
That's right.
stuff. So, and Halloween is coming up. It's October. So we want to make sure that we give some people some recommendations. The 80s gets kind of a bad reputation as far as music and movies. I think a lot of people they hear never gonna give you up and all that, and they think that's what the 80s was
There
all
was some
about.
of that, but there's a
Yeah, it
lot of
was.
stuff in the 80s.
There's a lot of stuff in the 80s that people don't really I mean, you gotta, if you were there, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And same with movies. Some people say, oh, 80s movies are all these sort of trashy, cheesy things that are just like people with big shoulder pads and giant teased up hair.
So not.
But when you look at it, when you really look into it, it's like, oh, that was 80s. Oh, that was too. Oh my God,
Ooh.
that's my favorite movie, and it's the
And
'80s.
they're movies that a lot of them are so iconic that you cannot remake them without them sucking, or you just
Right.
don't remake them because some of these haven't been remade and some of it have. And so
Yeah.
I think when you see the remakes, you realize there's some sort of charm in the, mostly analog, effects
Yeah.
and the low budgets. The remakes usually end up being like bigger budget, and I think some of the charm is gone when you do that.
Yeah. What? Hold on one sec. I'll be right back.
In the meantime, I'll just talk about other horror stuff.
I found it.
There it is.
Anyway, yeah, no, the 80s was more than you think. If
Yes,
you don't think about it too much, if you're a person that thinks the 80s was sort of cheesy and just
it was.
like movies like Lost Boys and stuff,
It had those,
and
but
the Goonies
it
and
wasn't
things.
all. And some people
There,
love those. Some people love that stuff.
yeah, I mean, if you were a little tiny kid in the 80s, then you probably love the Goonies and
Mhm.
Flight of the Navigator and whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've heard that the people who were sort of already kind of sophisticated adults in the 80s were really
Were
into
there
the
some?
kind of, yeah, I don't know. I've talked to some people, really old people, that tell
Heard
me
some
about
people
it.
from some old timers from the 80s talking about the 80s.
Yeah,
And
evidently pretty cool time. But
very cool time.
we've all got our favorites. What is your favorite 80s movie? Or actually,
What
let
is
me
it?
make that easy because I know you don't have one.
No,
What
there's
are,
not just one.
just name a bunch. Name a bunch of your favorites.
A bunch right now, a
Yeah,
bunch.
just a bunch of them.
Uh, you know, the Dead Zone, Cronenberg's Dead Zone. It's just, I think it was so perfect because of a few things. One, it had Christopher Walken, which instantly makes everything better. It just
Yeah.
does, just instant.
Yep.
All right, and he was still Christopher Walken, but he wasn't as much as stylized as he eventually became. Like he was
Right.
still sort of uh, inhabiting a character and trying to make things work. Oh, Freddy, yes. So he played a very sympathetic character who ends up waking up from a coma years later and finds out that his girlfriend has left him for another man, that life has changed, that there's a lot of differences and he's having to cope with that. But in waking up, he's discovered he has these weird powers.
Yeah.
Where he can, if he touches you, he sees how you die, which is
Right.
a pretty freaky thing to have. Does he
Yeah.
touch himself? I don't know. They didn't go into that. Anyway,
I don't know.
I don't know. Whoops, that didn't sound right. So, and it's a really heartbreaking film, and they have a really good relationship, with his girlfriend, who's played by Rick Adams.
Is it? Yeah, I think so. But it's
Um,
a Stephen King book,
it's a
first of
Stephen
all.
King book,
So
right? Important
automatic,
information. Yeah. And so there's a really nice, touching relationship where she feels bad, but she moved on because no one knew he was going to wake up. So, but for
Right.
him, it's the next day. And so
Yeah.
he's feeling very like, what? So he's just heartbroken. And there's so much sadness. The whole thing is got this element of Cronenberg, white, gray sky sadness.
Yes.
Just elegant, just so smart. And it has just one of the most iconic endings that I still think about in today's politics because a lot of it has to do
Yes.
with politics. But yeah, just that's definitely one of my top favorites because it's done in such a sensitive, beautiful way.
That's one of my favorites too. I think
Mhm.
Cronenberg had a run in the '80s there
Oh my
of a
gosh.
few pretty intense movies. I mean,
Mhm.
just in the '80s, Dead Ringers, The
Yep.
Fly,
Yep.
Videodrome, that one, Dead
Yep.
Zone,
Dead Zone.
and the and probably about 10 more that I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, Dead Zone was a great one. Christopher Walken, like you said, he wasn't quite overdoing the Christopher Walken thing yet.
Mhm.
But the Christopher Walken of this era is still really intense. There's something,
Quirky,
just his face.
interesting.
His
He
face
does so
is
much
just,
with a look.
yeah, just his eyes, and the story is great. It's one of those things where, like, how horrible would it be to basically to die and then to come back to life and to see how everybody's kind of moved on,
Yeah.
and you're still feeling like it was yesterday. It's sort of a Flight of the Navigator idea, but
Exactly. Stop it. So then also the kind of interesting thing about this film is that he has these powers, so he wants to help possibly solve this crime, this murder that happened.
Right.
And he thinks he can go to the scene and kind of get a sense of the murder and who it was, and that's a whole extra level of like pain that he didn't need.
Right.
So lots of great like depth. Probably one of the best Stephen King adaptations for sure.
One of the best, absolutely. That's always in my list of best Stephen King stories.
This very strange poster, like a montage of there's a scene where they go into a big tunnel to try and find a dead body, and then Christopher Walken sees it, and he's starting to get flashes of death and all that. But this kind of a classic, this was all analog at the time, so they were putting together photos, and there wasn't a photo shoot. Clearly, this is from the film. And they have, there's some screenshots. Probably, well, it's not even screenshots. They probably have pieces of the film that they actually, stuck together.
I don't actually remember this poster from that time. I remember the one that was just the title treatment.
Yeah,
it was a little bit different. Back then, you would just have a title treatment sometimes.
Yeah.
And an image or some kind of a, But that was an amazing film. It still is. Still holds up. It's
all right.
still
So what's your favorite? One of your
I'm going to go with another iconic filmmaker who you got David Cronenberg, who just about anything he made is worth watching.
Mm-hmm.
But the 80s are the ones, the iconic Cronenbergian type films. Another filmmaker who was having their peak at that time was a guy named John Carpenter.
Oh, yeah.
If you're not familiar with John Carpenter, you're not a horror movie fan. Sorry.
Yeah, and just you can put your horror fan card at the door because you're clearly not a horror fan if you don't know who John Carpenter is, which I don't know if there is anyone that doesn't know that. I mean, even though he isn't necessarily doing a lot of stuff currently besides being involved in those horrible new Halloween remakes. I'm sorry, but they're terrible.
Well, he did enough. He has done enough.
He's earned his time to shine on someone else's dollar. That's right.
He's always going to be on the pedestal, no matter what he does in the meantime.
That's right.
Maybe he'll have a comeback. Maybe he's just going through a slumpy time right now. But the '80s, yeah. Well, the '80s, he was on fire.
Oh, my God, so
he made movies like Christine, Prince of Darkness. There's a ton of them. I have a list somewhere, but I can't find it right now. The Fog, all kinds of stuff.
The Fog.
Yeah, and he made one movie that I think is on a lot of people's top list. It's just a perfect movie. When we were talking about movies that are perfect, this movie you watch it from beginning to end, and you're like, everything in it works. Everyone in it is great. The cast is incredible. The special effects are analog, like you said, but they're impeccable. The Thing. If you call yourself a horror movie fan or a science fiction fan or a science fiction horror fan, where that great combination of science fiction and horror come together, it is everything. It is isolation horror. It's body horror.
Yeah.
It's suspenseful. It's funny. It's It's got classic characters.
Kurt
It's got
Russell is
great.
in
It's
it,
got Kurt Russell. It's
which
got
is against type, which is genius.
yeah. It's just a perfect movie. I can watch it anytime. It's one of
It's
those
great.
movies that it's like putting on, a classic album. I put on, you listen to an album over and over through your life. I watch this movie periodically through my life.
And the effects were shocking at the time.
Yeah.
Like they were really creative. It was Rob Bottin, right?
Yeah, and how that
Outstanding, insane, like analog effects, like
there's
on
nothing
set,
digital
in
in this
camera.
movie.
Oh my god, just crazy! Like when you watch it, I can't imagine how they even did it physically. It's crazy.
I remember at the time saying, "How did they do that?" That was back in the days when you would see a movie. It was before digital effect, and you would see a movie, and you knew back then that it had to have been done on set. It's not. They didn't have the green screen vibe. I mean, there was some green screen stuff, but it wasn't like now where you see a movie and you see a character looking at something happening, some special effect happening, and you're like, "Oh, it's computer." I know how they did that. Back then, there was still that element of, "What am I seeing? Holy crap!" And
it holds up.
There's one character in the film who even reacts to one of the special effects in the way that you are currently reacting to it as you're watching it. He's like, "What the hell?" Paraphrasing. But it's just things happen on top of other things, and it gets bigger and bigger and crazier. And it's just so much fun, too. It's a
really fun
movie, and it has a classic dark ending.
And the remake doesn't even touch it. Like, just doesn't.
Yeah.
And there's also not only these insane effects, and the whole concept is great, is that they bring in the isolation horror aspect, and then the fact that they can't trust any of them. Like none of them trust each other. There's a whole insane scene where they tie everyone to a chair to try and test them to see who's an alien, who isn't. Just so great. So throughout the entire thing, and granted, this is technically a remake. It's like
true
everyone,
enough,
everyone has to watch their back, and they don't know who to trust. No matter how normal a person seems, they may not be that person. So it's got that great paranoid aspect to it. That's so good.
That whole
so good.
Squealing sound,
really good. So absolutely outstanding 80s horror for sure.
It's endlessly fun. It's a great Halloween movie to watch at home on Halloween because it's suspenseful, and if you've never seen it before, you're in for a huge treat. It holds up. It still
very
holds
good.
up. So that's my other one. You got another one?
I got another one. I'm actually wearing a shirt.
Oh.
All right, and then
it's Baby Yoda.
It's Baby Yoda. So, there's guilty pleasures.
Yes.
And this is one of those films that maybe
that's not Baby Yoda.
I hit the wrong one.
It's Bill Paxton.
It's underneath it. This is one of those films where Joe Dante, top of his form, Joe Dante, who also did some great werewolf films, just really fun. He was able to blend this sort of character-based humor with the horror, and both of them totally paid off each other. There was no like cheap shot. There wasn't any dumb humor. It was all very, very cute. And the thing about Gremlins is it set up a series of films and some iconography that still exists, as you can see. This is a relatively new shirt. I mean, I keep my eye out for Gremlin stuff. Granted, when I rewatched it recently with my husband, he did not think it was good.
Right.
So it may be one of those things that you have to be open to the 80s aspect of it. And then you also have to be aware that it was all analog effects again, pretty much 90%, 99% of it. And they were all puppets. They were real gremlins, but it's one of those things when you go bright light, everybody knows what you're talking about. It's just one of these things. And the fact that they made the cute little gremlin Gizmo the hero of the thing, yet there were scary ones too. It also made it a little more complicated because you're rooting for Gizmo, but he's still part of the problem. So
it's got his dark moments too. There was a lot of 80s movies that had a cute aspect to them, but then the cuteness becomes a threat, and it was kind of, this is one of the first movies that really did that. It was of the cute little creature, and then there was a ton of things that came off of this, like ghoulies and critters and
not
whatever.
Even nearly as good.
But this one I think was the original cute little monster, cute little furry monster that
cute.
Turns out to be not what you think it is.
Baby Yoda owes a huge debt to Gizmo because he's very similar and he's just extra cute.
Similar silhouettes. Yes.
Similar, very similar.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like this film. This is one of those like, well, something like The Thing. I would recommend, like, this movie will blow you away. I don't care when it was
Yeah.
made. And this movie's like, okay, this is a really fun, cool movie, and you just have to give yourself over. But it's not one of those movies that necessarily ages well. It's
Right.
very 80s. So if you're into the whole 80s look, you'll be happy. If you're
Yeah.
not into the whole the sort of cheesiness of it, and also the Joe Dante of it, because
Right.
his always had this fine line of, cute, campy, horror. So it's a little bit of everything, and it has a scary moment. So I mean, there's some harsh shit in this. I mean, people
Yeah.
die. Here we go. There's this picture. I mean,
Oh,
come
yeah.
on.
Yeah. It's
This little Gizmo. I mean, really, this should be opposite, because Gizmo's looking the wrong way. But
right.
I mean, come on. Who doesn't want Gizmo or Baby Yoda? I do.
Yeah.
So definitely, it's worth it if you want to watch a cute but also very scary movie.
And it's also really entertaining. It's got that 80s kind of overload entertainment vibe to it, sort of like the Back to the Future type of thing, where you can watch it over and over. There's people who are huge fans. It's got cult following. People still love Gremlins.
Yep.
It's funny, and it's also got a kind of a, the analog stuff you're talking about, the special effects, that gives it sort of a slightly broken edge that people like. The puppets sometimes look a little puppety,
but that's sort of fun too. Just seeing the reality of the thing in the space, and that the actors get to actually act with the creature and the puppet, instead of having to pretend like there's this tennis ball on a stick that's supposed to be a giant monster. That they'll put plug in later.
It's got a little Corey Feldman in it, right? Isn't it? Yeah. Is it Corey Feldman?
No, it's Zach Galligan.
And but isn't Corey Feldman his little neighbor who comes over? Is like a little, is like maybe his first movie or something.
You could be right.
Like a little boy.
Right. Yeah.
But it also has a really, I'm not going to give it away, but it has a character telling a story about Santa Claus that you can never forget too. It's a Christmas movie too.
It's Christmas. That makes it fun for, like, if you want to go, to some anti-holiday programming that's still in the zone. It's a really fun one to watch. Just put it next to Elf. People still like it.
Yeah. Well,
okay.
I would go into some more John Carpenter films, because I really love so many of them. Like Prince of Darkness, I think, is a great one. They Live is a classic.
Oh, you don't want to talk about They Live? Because I brought that up.
Well, yeah, I could talk about They Live.
Let's talk about They Live. Hey, for talking John Carpenter.
It's more towards science fiction, but it's got horror elements to it. It's a good Halloween sitting around.
It is a good Halloween thing.
Halloween movie night movie, and a great poster. I have that one framed in my house, as a matter of fact.
Fantastic poster. And it has that great iconic scene of him walking into the bank with his gun.
Yes. I've come here to do
kick
something
ass
to
kick
ass and chew gum, and I'm all out of chewing gum or something like that. So kind of silly, but
good.
It was supposed
but he
to
does
be
it
silly.
so well.
Yeah. Roddy Piper was great.
Roddy Piper. Yeah. And so here we have Roddy Piper, who in a way was kind of the predecessor to Dwayne Johnson. Like, he's this wrestler turned actor, and no one really took him seriously, but he was in this and he was really good. So, and also I was a little surprised that when I watched it again, how kind of dark They Live is at first. Like, a lot of it's about like homeless people, and they get a little bit into that whole aspect of, socioeconomic politics. And then you find
the
out
1% and that whole idea of, these people are poor because they're put there. They're made to be poor. They're supposed to be poor.
Yeah, they're food.
And the fancy people are the ones that are exploiting them, and They Live,
I still think about it too, because when they show that great scene where he puts on the glasses and he can see now the world to see the way it's supposed to see, the money having, this is your God, and billboards are like, consume, be a consumer, like all this kind of subliminal branding that you can't see because you don't have the glasses.
That's what being woke is, people are the word woke, they're trying to turn it into a bad word, but it's like, it means you put on the glasses and now you can see everything for what it is. It's and Rowdy Roddy Piper is going to hold you accountable.
That's right.
And that's what was so great about it. He exposed it, and that's what we're seeing a little bit of that, hopefully, coming to pass in our world. But
that's right. Well, you'll see the prominent politician right there in his glasses.
Yes,
there's a bunch of them in there.
It's a movie that holds
really
up.
Good. It does,
and it's also kind of funny. It's also really weird in a way that only John Carpenter seems to be
Yeah.
able to pull off that kind of
Right.
like a crazy idea. Like what a nutty, unhinged idea this is. But
Mm-hmm.
he goes for it and he does
That's
it,
right.
and it's a fun film. It's got one of
So
the
good.
longest fist fights ever filmed in it.
Like a 10-minute fight.
Yeah.
That was so funny. All right. Is
But
there another John Carpenter you want to talk? Kind of hijacked your John Carpenter.
well, that one is a good, yeah, that one. And Prince of Darkness is another favorite of mine. You know, I live really close to that church, which is kind of cool.
Yes.
I always take people, yes,
Go ahead.
but
He has
I always
nothing to do
take-
with John Carpenter.
But I always take people to that church when they come to town or if they want to go see a cool movie location. My friends know what it is. I just drive down to Little Tokyo and turn a corner, and I'm like,
That's right.
I point, and they're like, oh, and it still
Like,
looks the
holy
same.
shit, it does.
But it's one of those great movies, kind of like The Sentinel, where it's sort of talking about this ancient order of conspiracy, religious, underground, secret organization that's supposed to protect this thing, this ancient thing, and these people have sort of discovered it, and it's just a really fun, creepy, low key movie. It's a favorite, but just check it out if you're in the mood for something like that. You know, it's pretty funny.
Now's the time, people. It's October. You get to watch horror all the time now, because that is what is required of October, is Halloween
Yes.
spookiness.
Throw in a few 80s ones in there, you know.
Put some 80s in there. That's what we're talking about.
What's
All right.
another one from you?
I would have to say this. Reanimator.
Oh, yeah.
The thing about Reanimator is that it was a shocking,
Yes.
incredibly brutal, but
Yes.
also really funny, odd-toned film. Like, just blew my mind when I saw it.
Yeah.
And this is sort of based on, would it be kind of Frankenstein?
Yeah, it's supposedly H.P. Lovecraft, but
Yeah, H.P. Lovecraft was afraid. But it's sort of about, he has a potion that can bring you back from the dead. So when you see the severed head here? I mean, it's been a while since I've seen it. But I remember my main memory of this, and I think I've talked about it before, is it shows me how messed up our entertainment and censorship is. Because
yeah.
I saw this on film, on TV later. They were showing it on, like, it's a horror, anthology thing or something. It was for Halloween. So they have this big scene where this professor whose severed head is sitting on Herbert West's desk right here.
Yeah.
He's carrying his head around. He's still alive, so he's still talking. He walks around holding his head and wreaking havoc. He's just this terrible person. So he kidnaps this woman, Barbara Crampton. Yay, Barbara Crampton, so cool.
Yeah.
And he straps her to a table, and she's fully nude.
Yeah.
And he's taking his head, and he's going to go between her legs.
Right.
Between her legs. And I know, get all like, whoa, everything went crazy. And so here we are with the literal interpretation he's going to give head.
Right.
So he's got a severed head. He's going down. They blur out her boobs.
Right. I remember that.
What?
Yeah. It was...
In the meantime, we've seen a guy get his head cut off. He's walking around with a severed head. There's blood everywhere. There's tons of gore, dismembered bodies, parts. But the one thing that can't be seen is this woman's breasts.
No.
And I was like, are you kidding me with this right now? The whole scene was so brutal, yet that's the problem. So ever since I saw that, every time I hear anything about censorship or the MPAA ratings or anything, I think about this movie, because I'm like, this is what's so fucked up about America.
So 80s though, the 80s were really the time when it was like people talk now, they sort of yammer about the cancel culture, and I can't make, I'm no longer allowed to make racist jokes. Wah. But the thing about cancel culture is that it came from conservatives who were doing stuff like that. They always fine with violence. It seems like you can.
Violence is fine
because it's guns and blood and whatever. They're fine with that. But if you got a naked lady in there, oh my God,
nude body parts.
Nope. The Bibles are going to catch on fire.
Nope, not allowed.
So
what if a child saw that? I'm like, what if they saw this guy with his fucking severed head walking around? What's a child going to think of that?
That's cancel culture right there. They were canceling Dungeons and Dragons because and everything else, music. That was when everything. The 80s was the time when you felt like everything cool was being canceled because people were still upset when you had a non-white person who was a hero in a show,
and they're still getting upset.
Yeah, they're
Um,
still upset.
yeah, it's still ridiculous. So
Yeah.
anyway, so Jeffrey Combs played Herbert West in this. He's like the mad scientist, and he plays with such great
Yeah.
campy intensity. He's amazing.
He
And
came out
Barbara
of nowhere for
Crampton,
this.
so cute, so earnest. She's amazing
Yeah.
in it, and I just loved her in it. This kind of put her on the map,
Yes.
and she's been a horror icon ever since. And I
Yeah.
love that she's still in touch with that. Like she gets it, she's
Yeah.
totally on board for it. And so that's one of my favorite Reanimator is one of my favorite movies in the 80s because it was so shocking at the time. I hadn't seen anything like it. Again, all analog effects, like crazy, insane stuff. So there you go.
It was
Another
crazy.
great one for fun Halloween viewing.
Stuart Gordon, rest in peace. Yeah,
Yeah,
he did some great stuff there.
definitely his best one though was this one.
Yeah. I remember thinking he was going to be another sort of John Carpenter type, and he did some stuff. I think he was more interested in doing stage. I think he did plays and things. But
he was also kind of creature feature stuff. Like he liked the campy monster stuff, so it was hard to take him seriously. This one kind of touched on it at first because you had like the people, the severed reanimated animals and people walking around. It was all kind of gory and all that. But then he kind of went the next level on that next one he did. I forgot what it was called.
Like brain debt or brain damage or
something like that. Yeah,
can't remember now. See,
that got full on,
unfortunately,
goopy plastic monster looking stuff. But this was Reanimator is a classic. I definitely highly recommend it as a Halloween movie.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's a fun one because it's so over the top, but you do have to be prepared for the naked lady.
There's nudity.
Yeah,
in case anyone cares.
Y'all. Yeah,
I know no one cares that there's dismemberment, but there is going to be nudity. So
watch out for that naked lady. So I got another one, another John Carpenter. No, I'm gonna bypass John Carpenter for a bit.
Moving on.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about monster movies because I love monsters. I've always loved monsters. Monsters are hard to do. It's like so many people have tried to come up with monsters. A lot of times the monsters in movies tend to be more like Freddy Krueger or the slasher type monster where it's a human being. Yeah, it's like
in case you wondered. That's a more serious version of hi.
Yeah, hi. I think he speaks. Yeah,
sweet dreams.
He's got one of these.
That sounds like Child's Play.
Just like the real Freddy.
Friends forever. Okay, go ahead. Monsters. We're talking about monsters.
To the end. But we're all about the 80s.
We're dorks.
But monsters, actual monsters that aren't human beings wearing a mask or human being monster.
Who are the real monsters?
Yeah, well, yeah. And the point of a lot of monster movies is the fact that they're sort of misunderstood and you sort of feel for the monsters. But there's some monster movies where the monsters are just evil monsters. They're bad monsters. And Alien is a 70s movie. And Alien is one of my very favorite movies. And then it had a sequel in the 80s called Aliens with an S on the end. And that is an equally wonderful film that I love a lot. But it's so different. It's a sequel. It's a sequel that's just as I love it just as much as the first one. Maybe I love the first one a little bit more. But this is a sequel that is equal,
Sequel that's equal. Who directed it? Somebody kind of big and everyone knows his name.
Who is that? I don't know. James Cameron.
Exactly.
Yeah. What did he ever do? I don't know.
That guy. He's a big nobody.
But yeah, it was a James Cameron movie. He had previously done Terminator and I think Terminator 2.
Yeah. He brings the action.
And this is an action film.
The original film I thought was almost like a haunted house movie. This one is a action movie.
It's isolation horror for the first one. This one is also isolation horror, but this one is like a perfect combination of horror, monster movie, action film. It is so much fun. It's like completely over the top. It is endlessly entertaining. It had
Bill Paxton.
It had Bill Paxton and Sigourney Weaver and such a great cast.
Yeah.
Everybody in the cast is perfect, is very well defined. All of these characters. James Cameron is good at getting you into these characters. That's so important.
So important.
You get to know all the people. Everybody remembers Vasquez, but she's only in it, she only has a few lines,
But Bill Paxton has some iconic people still use them in gifts and everything.
you never forget Bill Paxton in this
Nope.
movie, but he doesn't. Spoilers. He doesn't survive the film, but you love him so
Love
much that
him.
it kills you when he dies.
Because
And
he's the
same
one
with
that's kind of like, what is up with this? We got to get the
yeah,
hell out of here. Like he's freaking out, which nobody else seems to be freaking out. And he's like,
right.
why is everyone not freaking out?
He handles it for everyone. He takes care of all the freaking out so that other people don't have to. But it's I mean, he's a classic character.
Do his line, Burk. You do his line good.
Oh, I don't know. There's so many in there.
Why you put her in charge?
Yeah, would you put her in charge? But it's like he's just got spit coming out of his mouth, and he's sweating, and
big eyes.
He's so good in that. I wish we still had Bill Paxton around.
Oh, I know. That was just a crime, literally.
I worked with him on some stuff, and he was like the nicest guy.
Yeah, I worked with him at a photo shoot. He was super cool.
Yeah, it's just such a tragedy to lose people like that.
Super cool.
You want him around for stuff.
He needed to get old.
But it's also got probably my favorite action star is Sigourney Weaver.
Oh, she's so good. She's my hero.
She is monumental and epic in this film. She is a hero for heroes, and she does it all in this film. She goes through a sequence of a character arc where she goes from being, I don't want to get involved. No,
it's like, no, I'm not doing this.
If you don't believe me, then you're on your own. You take care of it. I'm going to smoke cigarettes with my cat. And so, but then she gets sort of pulled into this thing, and she's like, you guys, you pulled this down on yourself.
That's right.
But then they're trying to handle it, the Marines, the Space Marines, and then it's like, she's like, okay, these guys are idiots. I have to do this. I have to take this.
And there's a character named Burk in it.
Yes, of course, Burk.
There's a guy named
Anytime
Burk.
there's a Burk, he always gets killed.
Don't trust him.
Don't trust him. He's a bad guy, or he just gets killed. He was thrown out of a window by a devil-possessed little girl. Or,
oh my God, just not good.
good.
I think what I really like too about Sigourney Weaver is that the casting was great, because initially, especially, most films they put a man as the hero. So in the first film, she was kind of the final girl. Like, she's in the movie, she survives, she gets to be a hero at the end. That's kind of the classic, hero formula.
And you
but
go
in
back
this,
to the beginning of that film, she's the one who said, no, don't bring him into the show.
Exactly. It's like, don't you? And she was kind of in charge. Like, she was a strong woman the whole time. And she gets to be the hero, which normally that's given to a man. So that was kind of advanced at the time. So then in the second one, she's even more badass. So they still have this incredible, strong female lead in these films. That cannot be underestimated, because this does not happen in many films, let alone horror. You get to have a final girl, but mostly it's guys rescuing women. That's usually what it is. So it's really cool to see Sigourney Weaver is the most capable, even more than a cyborg, or was he a cyborg? Robot. Lance Henriksen.
Yeah, he's good too, Lance Henriksen.
Yeah, he was great, but she's even more badass than him.
He prefers the term artificial person.
That's right, artificial person.
But the thing about Sigourney Weaver in this that's so great is the fact that she's not just one of those sort of blindly marauding heroes that runs in and saves everybody. She's also a woman in it, which I love the fact that she takes care of people. There's that sort of aspect of I don't know, woman, like a woman hero. She's not the role obviously wasn't written for a man, and then they stuck her in there. Mm-hmm. This was written for a woman, and because she's very caring, she takes care of people. She's got the feelings and the compassion. She takes risks to help people and to go back for the little girl, and the little girl calls her mommy, and there's this whole thing of her being, I don't know, it's got an aspect of that I really like. She's you trust her, and you know that she's going to come back for you. If you're encased in an alien, egg web, she's going to come get you. You can trust her.
So Aliens, another great film. The Alien series is pretty strong overall, so definitely worth watching. The first and the second one.
And the third one I like. People put down the third one, but I like the third one. It's different.
Yes, it was
the fourth
different.
one I like.
Yeah, the fourth is not bad. I mean, it's still based on a strong, through line, so you can give it that alien thing if you're into that. I mean, is it as good as maybe some of the earlier ones? Maybe not, but it's its own thing. It's a different take.
It's a different.
So since we're talking about Bill Paxton, I'll bring up another one of my most favorite.
Yeah.
So you can't talk about 80s horror without talking about Near Dark. Not only is it Bill
Absolutely.
Paxton, female director Catherine Bigelow, married to James Cameron. Let's just tie this one in, shall we?
Yeah.
Absolutely shocking at the time that a woman directed this because it is badass as hell, super gritty, really violent. Like, and it pretty much put on the map the idea that vampires are not these cool dudes who live in castles with the long capes. Like, it brings them down to earth, and they're like these damaged, fucked up criminals that drive around and enjoy the violence and the sadism. And I love that idea that it isn't just about survival; it's about they enjoy it, and that's what they like. And they don't have to sleep in coffins; they can just spray paint their car windows black and
Yeah.
stay in the car. Like, it was very like seat of your pants survival for these guys, and it was just absolutely spectacular.
It is. It's one of those classic. It's a classic vampire film. It's and you know you feel like I mean even back then you felt like maybe it was tapped out. You know the genre was tapped out. But then Stephen King did you know Salem's Lot and all that. But you get the idea that this one it's like not just a rehash of vampires again and again and again. This one sort of updated it to present day, and it also did that thing like you're talking about. They blackened out the windows.
Yeah,
They're still vampires,
right.
but this is what vampires would really be like now.
That's
They'd
what
be
it'd be
these
like.
desperate and it
They
throws
can't have
in-
jobs. I
Right.
mean, how they get so they basically turn into criminals. They stay in seedy hotels, they rob
Yeah.
people, and they kill them. They, you know, and that's kind of their jam.
and you're fighting the whole time.
Yes.
And there's also these tragedies too. The little boy who's
Yeah.
stuck as a little boy.
I love that idea.
And interestingly, that I just talked about Aliens, this movie reunites 3 of the cast members from
That's right.
Aliens. It's got Lance Henriksen, it's got Bill Paxton, and it's got Jeanette Goldstein, who
That's
played
right.
Vasquez that I talked about.
So good.
So it's basically like the cast of Aliens,
It's true.
you know, become vampires, and it's just, I mean, it's just a great film. It's a really
The
good one for
bar
Halloween.
scene is one of
Oh,
my
yeah.
favorite horror movie scenes of all time, where they
Yeah.
just are hanging out in that honky tonk bar. There's
Yeah.
super shady. No one's in there. They're kind of sitting at a table looking all cool. You know, and they're all like, the waitress comes over and they're like, yeah, hey, why don't you sit a while?
Yeah.
Oh, and just everything goes to shit. And it's so
Yeah.
well done. It's like, this is what they do from town to town. They travel and they do this shit. And you could see
Yeah.
the easy camaraderie and the kind of the way they had each other's backs, and almost like a formula of how they take over a bar and kill everyone.
They've been doing it for so
That's
long.
just what they do.
Yeah.
So good. Excellent film.
It's got Jenny Wright in it.
Jenny Wright's great
got
in it.
Adrian Pasdar, who was
just a baby then.
he was on a show that I worked on called Agents of Shield.
So good.
Cool guy.
Yeah,
and,
super cool.
And Joshua Miller, who is who plays the kid in it. He played
yeah.
kids in some stuff.
Yep.
He was in what was it called? River's Edge.
Yes.
So strange little boy in that film, and he's also a strange little boy here. And what's cool about it is he's like a little adult, which is perfect for his character here.
That's right.
But he is the son of Jason Miller, who was, Father Damien Karras
right.
in The Exorcist, who was so incredible in that film.
That's right.
And a lot of other stuff. Did a lot of stage work, but he
Well,
still
he
does
also
things
he
from-
wrote Final Girls, which is another more
Yeah.
contemporary film, a pretty recent film. That was a great film. He wrote a horror film, so he's still kind of in the zone.
Yeah,
And he should work more, really.
yeah, he was good as a kid, and I
Yeah.
imagine he's probably still good. You know,
Yeah.
probably he's got his dad's genes.
right.
You know,
Yeah. So there's that. Near Dark. Top that.
yeah. Well, it's hard to top that one. I mean, there's some other films from the '80s that everybody knows about, like The Shining, of course.
Yeah, Shining. Oh, I mean, you almost don't even need to talk about that. It's
Yeah.
like it's such a classic, such a perfect film. Another one of those you cannot remake this movie. Don't even try. Don't even go there. They did it on TV. It was terrible. Do not go near the TV version. Always watch the Kubrick. First of all, it's Kubrick. First, it's a Kubrick film. Then it's a Stephen King film.
Yes.
That is why Stephen King is not super wild about this movie, is that Kubrick made it his own. And Stephen King's like, that's not my book. It's like, well, it kind of is. So there you go.
I
So
feel
watch
like
The
it's-
Shining. It's amazing.
I feel like the Stephen King book still hasn't been made into a movie.
Yeah.
There's something. I mean, this is
know.
like you said, this is a Stanley Kubrick.
It's
film.
perfect though.
It's basically like he took the the book and took the title
Yeah.
and some of the ideas in it and riffed
It made
on
him
it.
better. I
Went
mean,
on it on his own. I don't know if it's better. It's
I
just
think
it's
it's
different.
better. You know
They're
why I
both
think it's better? Because in the TV
equal.
movie, when because they changed the topiary and bushy
Right.
animals into a maze.
Right.
So when you see how they did that, you're like, yeah, I can see why Kubrick changed it to a maze. It's just better on even just a conceptual level. A maze is better, you know.
Well, in the book, it's creepy, but if you're going to make a movie
It
about
doesn't look
topiary
good.
animals coming to
It
life,
just
that's
looks silly.
always going to look silly. It's
It
always
looks
going to look
silly.
silly. Yeah.
And you know the killing of some of the main characters,
Yeah.
I think it just didn't work, and I feel like you took kind of the soul out of the story when you kill off some of these main characters. So they didn't do that in this, and you had an element of heart that continued through to the end.
And Kubrick did kill off some main characters. That
Yeah, oh yeah,
that
he
Stephen
killed off
King
main
did.
characters.
Yeah. But it's
So that's what the cool part is. But yeah,
they're different things. I consider I love the book, I love the movie, but they're both totally different.
very different, but still
things.
great. It's one of my favorite Stephen King books and one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your next one?
Let's see. What do I have on my list here? Well, there's still so many. American Werewolf in London was another great one. Some other. There was a bunch of werewolf movies in the 80s.
Yeah.
There
Joe
was
Dante again.
Yeah, like The Howling and The Wolfen, or just Wolfen. There was famous directors like even Ken Russell, who made some really horrifying movies that's hard to classify them as horror because they're a little bit more literary than like The Devils is a horrifying movie, but it's a 70s film.
Yeah.
But in the 80s, he made a movie called Lair of the White Worm, which is it's a Ken Russell film.
Yes, it is.
It's a bizarre, nightmarish, hallucinogenic, psychedelic kind of a film, which I recommend if you're a type of person, if you like The Devils, if you like Ken Russell
I was going to say The
films.
Devils, I think, was a more successful film than Lair of the White Worm. And because it is genuinely still just terrifying and brutal and just radical.
It's kind of depressing. Might not be one of those fun Halloween movies.
It's not a fun Halloween movie. It's more if you really want to be disturbed, you see The Devils. But Lair of the White Worm's a little more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would like to bring up one film which it seems like a 70s movie. It kind of is. In fact, if I was going to classify it as a film, as a type of film, I would say, it was made in 1980.
Okay.
And it's called The Changeling.
Oh.
And it's got George C. Scott in it. So it's totally a 70s film, you feel like, but it was made in the 80s. It might have been made in 1979 and released in the 80s.
It does seem like
so
that.
It might actually be a 70s film. But this movie it's a scary movie. It's there's when you talk about Halloween horror films, there's horror movies that are horrifying and they're shocking and they're scary. But there's some movies that are actually scary.
Mm-hmm.
And we always go through these things. We talk about movies that are scary, movies that haunt you, like The Haunting and
Haunted
The
by the
Exorcist.
Haunting.
Yeah, there's even movies like The Haunting of Hell House are scary, even though they're a little bit over the top and stuff. But The Changeling, I think, is a scary movie. It's a ghost story.
It's a good classic ghost story. There's like the big mansion. There's the weird mysteries. There's the cool vibe of just the 70s, 80s kind of gritty film stock look.
Yes.
You have, of course, a wheelchair who's creepier than an old creepy wheelchair that's got cobwebs on it. So there's a lot of like creepy undertones to this film that are just even more so than even the plot. It's just the whole framing of the film. So it's really well done.
I always combine these two films. The Changeling, it's got George C. Scott, great actor and everything. But the other movie that I feel like I put in the same category was a year later was a movie called Ghost Story. Peter Straub. Yeah. They're both similar ghost. They're ghosts. They're about ghosts. And to me, ghosts can always be kind of scary if they're done right. The idea of a haunting or a ghost kind of story. You got your demonic possession movies. You got your monster movies. You got your ghost movies, which can either be really awful or they can be really well done, depending on how they're written and
I mean, ghost
produced and all
stories
that.
can be some of the scariest movies.
Yes.
Because they're so vague in interpretation in a way. Like ghosts can look
Yes.
like anything. They can really be anything. They can be from anywhere. There could be any cause. It might be a ghost. It might not be a ghost. Like there's so many variables when it comes to ghosts. I feel you can build so many different kinds of movies around it.
Yeah,
That's
and
why it's still
unlike
scary. Like some people won't be. They're like, I can't watch ghost movies. Can't watch them.
Right.
Like be beyond everything else. People are like, oh, don't watch any ghost stuff. You're like, that's so funny.
My wife is scared. Mew is scared
That's
of
so funny.
ghosts a little bit because I think it's a cultural thing in
Yeah.
her
I
home
mean, ghosts
country.
can't hurt you. Technically, if they existed, they would be pretty benign. They just look
Maybe
weird.
They can hurt you though. Yeah,
They
you
can't
don't
hurt you.
know. But I
They
mean,
can't.
they can scare the bejesus
They'll
out of
scare
you though.
you.
If they come out from under the bed, good lord.
They'll give you a heart attack.
Yeah, and the thing about ghosts is you could have one in your house and not know it. You know what I mean?
They're very quiet
Yeah, it's like having
and they're transparent, so you
like
never
a-
know.
like having a spider loose in the house or something.
A spider.
But but a good ghost story. There's a lot of them in the 70s. Like I just recently watched The Haunting of Julia, which is a great ghost story, which is similar to Ghost Story, the movie.
Right.
Same writer and all that. But the idea of a ghost is cool, where you have the story where somebody goes in and there's a ghost in the house and they see a premonition or an apparition and a little ball bounces across the floor like in The Changeling or something like a manifestation of a ghost.
Right.
But then there's some really good ghost stories like Ghost Story and The Changeling where you get a story with the ghost story.
The ghost isn't the only point, which
It's not
is
the only
what makes
point.
it a really good. Yeah.
And The Haunting of Julia is like that too. You get like what you think is going on, or Don't Look Now, another one. But The Changeling is one that has a great story with it, where it was a revelation about what the ghost is and why it's doing what it's doing. And the same with Ghost Story, same with Haunting of Julia, same with The Haunting and The Haunting of Hell House. The ending of
There's
that
a lot of
where
haunting movies out there.
Yes.
Lots of hauntings.
But the best ones, I think, have these underlying subplots that sort of are revealed, and you find out, wow, there's more to this than I thought.
That's right. So that's another great one. So there's ghosts in your house, and then there's Cenobites in your house. Oh no! Don't let a Cenobite in your house. It's never good. So I thought I'd bring up Hellraiser. Hellraiser is a great film because it's Clive Barker
Yes.
story. Clive Barker's first directorial debut. His only directorial debut.
Well, he did Rawhead Rex, didn't he?
No,
I
he
think-
did The Brood, I think. We should find that out.
he,
Anyway, so it's not his only film he directed. I'm saying his directorial debut.
It's his first, yeah.
And he had a absolute control over how these Cenobites looked, like how it was going to pan out. And granted, it was his first time directing, so there's a little bit of awkwardness here and there.
Right.
But it has a nice gritty. It's super gritty. Feels low budget, but the Cenobites are beautifully realized. And it's like Doug Bradley. Oh my god.
Right.
So he actually makes Pinhead kind of hot. I'm just saying. So this is a beautiful film that way, but the effects are very, very 80s. I had just watched it recently because
The
there's a new
optical
Hellraiser.
effects, the light effects.
Yeah, this weird lightning. So the new Hellraiser's out. So I wanted to see the original Hellraiser again. So I watched it again, and it holds up on a level because, I mean, almost purely because of Doug Bradley, but also because the idea that people were seeking them out as a thrill and that they want this experience. Like I love the idea that this was something they wanted as a pure form of sadism. Like they wanted to feel the pain, they wanted to bring the pain, they wanted to have, like they wanted this, and that was what made it the most twisted thing of all, is that they're kind of creating this. They're also feeding this creature that's living in this house. They're trying to bring him back to life so he can be real again. They're kind of, they're spilling blood and kind of he's becoming more and more human. That kind of went away after this because everybody's like, we don't care about this guy who's the creepy guy on the wall. We only care about the Cenobites. That's all we care about now. And also another fun thing is that Sufjan Stevens wrote a song about Hellraiser when he was holed up with the pandemic, and it's on his new album. Now I can't remember the name of it, but it's one of the latest Sufjan Stevens albums, and they're all based on like horror movies and like cheesy movies he watched when he was stuck at home. Yeah. So I love that he actually has lyrics trying to rhyme Cenobites with things, which is amazing. So that's great. And they're beautiful songs. They're not scary songs. They're gorgeous. It feels like a lyrical ballad, but then you listen to the lyrics, you're like, what is happening in this song? So I love that. But and we could compare this to the new Hellraiser, which I actually really enjoyed. They kind of make it a little more epic. You kind of get a bigger idea of what the Cenobite thing is about, and that they're creating Cenobites, and there's a way to lure them out. That a man wants to try and trap them and make them, make him a Cenobite. He wants to be all powerful. That kind of, I love that idea. And everyone gets what they deserve.
Right.
Pretty much. And so there it is, Hellraiser. And I got to work on some Hellraiser posters. So that was kind of a thrill that I got to actually work on some. I don't think I ever actually finished any, but I got to work on it, which was, that's kind of fun.
Well, interesting thing about Clive Barker, the history in the history of Cinemondo is
that's right.
Cinemondo, way back in the 1920s, was an actual print magazine when we first started it, when we were babies. And no, actually, it was in the 80s. So it was around the time of all this, and we remember all the, when Hellraiser came out and all that stuff. Yeah. And Hellraiser 2 and things like that. And we got we had a big full page ad on the back of the print magazine. And I got to do an interview with Clive Barker in like 1985 or something like that. Was it 85 or 86, something like that?
We need to get him on the show again.
Yeah, it would be great. See if he remembers.
Figure that out.
But I sent him a copy of the magazine, and he autographed, or I met him actually. Met him at a convention and got him to autograph the magazine, and he remembered doing the interview.
I have his Books of Blood signed.
Yeah, the original books, the first editions.
Yeah, hardcover. So I just love him. He wrote books that are unfilmable.
Right.
So I would love for someone to take it on, especially in this long form, the series thing we have going for streaming. I would love someone to try. If Chris Nolan would be great at this. Like somebody, even Denis Villeneuve. Like I would love somebody like who could bring Dune to the screen, could easily bring a Clive Barker, epic novel to the screen. I would love to see that.
But the
Imagica would be so good.
Oh yeah. But didn't he do in those the Books of Blood that you have? Didn't he do the artwork for the covers?
Yeah, he did.
He's also a really good artist, really good designer, and his drawings and paintings are beautiful.
That's why these designs for Cenobites are so good, because this is all out of Clive Barker's head, and he got to visually put them together. And I like in the new one how they're not wearing leather; it's actually their skin formed into what looks like an outfit, which is super creepy. Yeah, really well done. So
yeah,
there it is, Hellraiser.
Very hurty.
That's right. Okay, we're coming up on an hour. Let's jam through these.
Should I do one more?
Great ones. Okay, let's do it.
Let's do one more. What was it? I had one. I want to do one more. It is a movie that I've talked about before, but to me, for some reason, I think this is just a fun movie. I don't know why. It's just a fun Halloween movie. It's a great Halloween, to watch it on Halloween, because you're not gonna. It's not depressing. It's not gonna put you in a dark mood or bum you out or anything. Child's Play, the original one, the original Child's Play.
Best friends.
The 1988 Child's Play, the original one, directed by Tom Holland. That movie holds up.
It does.
I don't know why, and it's the type of movie that you wouldn't think would hold up, but it's a strange movie. It is it's not a normal film at all. It's not what a lot of people have tried to copy it and to copy the vibe of it, but it has its own vibe. I don't know. It still stands alone to me.
That's right.
Apart from all the sequels and everything, the first Child's Play to me is a singular thing.
Yeah.
Brad Dourif is great in it. His voice and his sort of attitude for this thing. Yes. The idea of it is, it's one of those ideas that's kind of funny, kind of horrible. And, of all things, this horrible criminal, through some sort of voodoo hex mojo stuff, ends up inhabiting the body of a ridiculous-looking children's toy that I'm sure is based on Cabbage Patch Dolls, definitely, which were the hot toy in those days.
That's right.
And we're so silly looking and so gigantic and weird and like awkward. They're like this big stiff toy, but the
like
idea,
a big doll, like it's almost too big.
It's too big and it's too cute and it's too hokey and it's cheesy and it's like friends to the end. And it's strange that kids wanted them, but kids wanted those things. When I was a kid, I always wanted monsters and space people, and like toys that were kind of like I don't know, weird monsters and things, monster models, but the idea that kids would want a toy like that, they wanted them, and there was tons of kids that were
They're
fighting
toys
over
that are as big as they were.
but parents were fighting over these things for Christmas, the Cabbage Patch dolls. And so this movie makes sense in the context of the time. And
Yep.
the toys got like these overalls and the sort of rainbow sweater and the bright red hair. And he's, Chucky, my friend. Or what was
They
it
made him
called?
look really evil in this.
Yeah. Like
Good
guys or something. Good
good
doll.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, good guys. You can kind of see it right there.
And he's got they had little toolbox and stuff.
Yeah. And he doesn't just use a knife. He uses whatever's handy, and he's really good at it.
But the first movie, I think, was so weird. I remember when I first saw it, I remember thinking, this is so nuts to have a cute little doll be the scary thing. And dolls, of course, are another genre in Hollywood. I mean, not Hollywood, Halloween. Horror, where you have things like Trilogy of Terror, and a doll running around the house, or any scary doll movie. There's a few of them. This is another one, and it's a good one. Evil Threatening Dolls, which was the name of an article from the old Cinemani magazine too.
That's right. Now, as an aside to that, so I do movie posters and entertainment advertising. So I got to work on the key art for the new Peacock series, Child's Play. Chucky, not Child's Play. It's Chucky.
Nice.
And so I got to work on season 2, and we did this poster for Chucky that I just love, and every little thing. And I'm going to give my hats off to Adrian. She's an art director that worked with us, and she did this poster, and she did such a great job on this. So
nice.
I love this poster on so many levels, and it's like this could be a disaster, but she just made it beautiful. And the series, I have never really kept up with Chucky movies. I didn't really think they were that good. After the first
sequels,
one, I'm like, The series I really enjoy. I mean, they're bringing the extreme violence and the Chucky nastiness. I mean, and Brad Dourif still does the voice.
Cool.
But I love that everything on this throne is an Easter egg to Child's Play. Everything is involved in Child's Play. So it's just a great poster for a really good series.
Hammers and stuff.
Yes. I'm looking forward to the new one. Each one they kind of bring in like a genre. Like this was like Catholic school. They're going back to school. So Chucky, of course, follows them there. Chucky, near and dear to my heart. I was so thrilled to be able to actually work on a Chucky project. It was super fun, and I had such a great team on it, and they were so good. We had so much great art. There's actually lots of other art out there that we did. If you see any Chucky season 2 stuff, that was us. But I wanted to give Adrian a shout out because she just really killed it on that poster.
Nice. That's super cool. It's a it is a classic. It is a classic franchise, I guess they call it.
Yeah.
But it all started with that first one, and I think that first.
And he's still doing the voice, even for the series. Brad
still
Dourif
holds up for me.
And Brad Dourif's daughter is in the series, so
that's
kind of cool. They just keep this show. The Chucky just keeps on bringing the love.
Yeah. So we're going on an hour here with this one.
We're going on an hour.
And
we gotta wrap it up.
I feel like maybe I'm halfway through. Let me do my next one. No, I'm gonna stop right here. We're not even gonna get into things like Day of the Dead or Poltergeist or
Evil Dead movies.
The Evil Dead movies.
American Werewolf in London, near and dear to my heart.
Friday
Nightmare
the
on Elm
13th,
Street, which
Fright
we didn't
Night.
actually talk about. This
Videodrome.
We're talking about the first Nightmare on Elm Street, the Wes Craven Nightmare on Elm Street, where he actually brought Freddy to life, and it was actually a really nasty little movie versus a little more cartoony, surreal, dreamlike ones. So
Freddy was a threat in that first
he
one.
was bad news. Yeah. So
we got Dead and Buried. We got Lost Boys.
We got
Ghostbusters.
We told you guys that don't get us started because this is what happens. We just never stop. And I could easily keep going. I have so much more to say about this, but I guess we have to stop.
We have to eventually stop. Yeah.
We have to stop. No one's going to listen to this whole thing.
I know. So
we're hoping if you guys watching these films, we'd love to hear your comments in the below about which films you like. Did you watch some of these? What are your favorite 80s horror movies? Anything, because we love to talk to you about them. Just tell us. We'll talk. We will respond because this is a near and dear topic. I'm telling you.
Yeah. But we're gonna wrap it up right here and say bye to everyone. go have some have some Halloween movie nights out there
Have some
and
candy.
check out some of these movies that we're hipping you to. I know they're not like super underground movies or anything. These are sort of
there's
a lot of
crowd
mainstream
pleasers.
stuff. But if you haven't watched them in a while, or if you've never seen them,
Yeah.
thumbs up from the
That's
gang
right.
here. Yeah.
Take some of our recommendations and run with it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.